The explosion shook the entire planet like an earthquake. Nari's carefully placed bombs did exactly what she had planned them to do. The atmospheric processing facility tore itself apart in a massive chain reaction that sent shockwaves deep into Kethmoran's crust and core. But Nari did not live to see her plan succeed. The blast killed her instantly, along with dozens of Vorthak soldiers who had been trying to capture her. The enormous chamber collapsed completely, burying everything under millions of tons of twisted metal and broken crystal. Her body was never found among the wreckage. Many miles above the destruction, her 3 surviving friends felt the ground shake violently under their feet as they ran toward their escape ship. Minho had barely managed to get them out of the underground tunnels before the explosion happened. Now they raced through streets filled with panicking Vorthak civilians who had no idea what was happening to their world. The atmospheric composition is already changing rapidly, Bora said, checking her scientific instruments as they ran. Oxygen levels are dropping very fast. The aliens have maybe 6 hours before the air becomes completely unbreathable. Did your message get transmitted successfully? Jihai asked. Yes. Every conquered world in the galaxy should have received the complete information by now. They reached their stolen ship and took off just as Vorthak military vessels began swarming the area around the destroyed facility. But the enemy pilots were confused and disorganized. They had never dealt with a serious attack on their homeworld before and did not know how to respond. As their ship climbed rapidly toward the safety of space, the 4 survivors looked back down at Kethmoran through their windows. The beautiful crystal cities were going dark one by one as emergency power systems tried desperately to save energy. Millions of ships were launching from the surface as Vorthak tried to evacuate their dying planet. She actually did it, Taeyang said quietly. Nari really destroyed their entire world. Minho was listening to Vorthak military communications on the radio. Their government is in complete chaos. Half of their space fleet is rushing back here to help with emergency evacuations. The other half is trying to figure out what happened and who was responsible. Good, Jihai said. Her voice was cold with grief and anger. Let them be afraid and confused for once in their lives. The ship's communication system suddenly came alive with radio signals from all across the galaxy. Bora had been right about her message reaching the conquered worlds. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had been enslaved by the Vorthak for decades were rising up against their masters. With the Empire's military forces scattered and confused, rebellions were breaking out on hundreds of planets simultaneously. Listen to this transmission, Bora said, translating an alien broadcast for the others. The people of Zerion 7 have destroyed 3 major Vorthak bases and captured their orbital defense station. They are asking other worlds to join them in fighting back. More messages kept coming in every few minutes. A coalition of 5 different species had attacked the Vorthak mining world of Drakmor and driven out all the occupying forces. The crystalline beings of Vash had completely wiped out an entire Vorthak battle fleet, using weapons nobody knew they possessed. On Earth, human military forces were striking at Vorthak positions on 3 different continents. The Galactic Revolution had finally begun, but the victory came at a terrible price that would haunt the survivors forever. As the 4 friends traveled slowly back toward Earth, they watched Kethmoran die through their telescopes. The planet's atmosphere became poisonous within 12 hours. Emergency life support systems failed one by one across the surface. 12 billion Vorthak civilians died as their world became completely uninhabitable. Was it really worth it? Minho asked one night as they sat together in the ship's common area. Bora looked up from her computer where she was reading reports about the spreading galactic uprising. 57 worlds have declared their independence from the Empire. The Vorthak military is retreating from 23 star systems. Yes, I believe it was worth the cost. But 12 billion innocent people died, Minho said sadly. 20 billion innocent people died last year alone from Vorthak attacks, Jihai replied. How many more billions would have died if we had done nothing to stop them? They argued about it for hours, but there was no perfect answer. War was always ugly and terrible. The only real question was whether the final victory justified the horrible price that had been paid for it. When they finally reached Earth 3 months later, they found a world that had been completely transformed. The human government had been overthrown by the military during their absence. Admiral Park Sang-ho, who was Jihai's cousin, was now leading the planet's defense forces. Humanity was no longer hiding in fear from the Vorthak Empire. They were actively hunting down and destroying every alien base they could find. "The Senate wants to arrest all of you for war crimes," Sang-Ho told them during their secret debriefing meeting. "They say Nari committed genocide against an entire species. What do you think about what we did?" Bora asked. The admiral looked very tired and much older than when they had left Earth. He had been fighting Vorthak forces for months while they were gone. "I think she saved the entire galaxy from slavery. But history will have to decide whether she was a hero or a monster. The 4 survivors were quietly pardoned for their actions and given new identities to protect them from people who wanted revenge. They scattered to different parts of Earth, trying to build new lives from the ashes of their old ones. But they stayed in contact with each other, bound together forever by what they had done and what they had lost. The Vorthak Empire took 6 months to collapse completely. Without their homeworld to coordinate their scattered military forces, they could not maintain control over their vast territories. One by one, their remaining strongholds fell to rebel armies. The last Vorthak military base surrendered exactly 1 year after Bixen village had been destroyed. A year after that, representatives from 47 liberated worlds gathered on Earth for a historic ceremony. They were creating a new galactic alliance based on cooperation and mutual defense instead of conquest and slavery. The meeting was held in a small mountain valley in Korea, where a village called Baeksan had once existed. Admiral Sang-Ho read the names of the silent mountain cell to the assembled delegates from across the galaxy: Nari Minho Jihi Taeyang and Bora, the 5 humans who had traveled further from home than anyone before them and changed the fate of every living creature in the universe. A simple memorial was built on the exact spot where Nari's family home had stood before the bombing. It was not fancy or expensive, just a plain stone marker surrounded by green rice fields that grew tall and healthy in the mountain soil. New families lived in the rebuilt village, but they all knew and remembered the story of what had happened. There, the inscription on the memorial stone was written in 47 different languages representing all the species that had been freed from Vorthak slavery. But the words were exactly the same in every language. She was just a farmer who loved her family. They should not have taken that from her. Minho died peacefully in his sleep 5 years later. He was buried next to the memorial, exactly as he had requested in his will. Jihai became a general in the new Galactic Defense Force and spent her life making sure no single empire could ever again threaten the freedom of so many worlds. Taeyang opened a school where he taught young people from many different species about the true cost of freedom and peace. Bora continued her scientific research, but now she studied how different species could work together and help each other instead of fighting. Sometimes the 3 survivors would meet at the memorial on quiet summer evenings. They would sit among the rice plants and remember their friend who had started a revolution with nothing but grief, determination, and love for her murdered family. "Do you think she knew it would lead to all of this?" Bora asked one evening as the sun set behind the mountains. "That her sacrifice would free the entire galaxy?" Jihai looked up at the stars, where ships from dozens of different worlds now traveled freely and safely. "No. She just wanted justice for her parents and her little brother. But sometimes that is enough to change everything." The galaxy was a very different place now. There were still wars and conflicts between different species, but no single empire ruled through fear and murder. The lesson of Keth Maroon was remembered and taught to children on every world. Even the strongest empire could fall if enough people decided to fight back against injustice. And in a small village in the mountains of Korea, rice grew green and tall in fields where a young farmer named Nari had once walked on peaceful mornings, dreaming of nothing more complicated than taking care of her family and living a simple, quiet life. She had kept her promise to them after all. Getting onto the surface of Kethmoran was much easier than Nari had expected it to be. The Vorthak security systems were designed to prevent people from leaving the planet, not to stop anyone from coming in. Their stolen ship looked exactly like any other military transport vessel, and Minho had programmed all the correct identification codes into their computers. They landed at a huge cargo facility on the outskirts of the capital city. Thousands of ships arrived and departed every single day, carrying stolen goods and resources from conquered worlds across the galaxy. Nobody paid any attention to 5 more workers wearing stolen Vorthak uniforms. Nari had never seen anything like the Vorthak capital city in her entire life. The buildings were made of black crystal, that reached up into the clouds like giant fingers. Strange colored lights moved through the walls like living creatures swimming through water. Millions of Vorthak moved through the wide streets in perfectly organized patterns like ants working in an enormous colony. "It really is beautiful," Bora whispered as they walked through the city center, trying to blend in with the crowds. "It is built on the blood of murdered children," Nari replied coldly. She was thinking about all the destroyed worlds and dead families that had paid for this magnificent city with their lives. They had spent weeks studying detailed maps and blueprints of the capital city. The atmospheric processing facility was located in the exact center, protected by multiple layers of security systems and thousands of heavily armed guards. But Minho had discovered a way to get inside through the old maintenance tunnels that ran deep under the city. "Everyone remember the plan," Nari said as they prepared to split up and go to their different positions. Ji Hai and Tai Yang will create loud distractions in the outer districts to draw guards away from the center. Bora will hack into their main communication systems to send messages to the conquered worlds. Minho will secure our escape route back to the ship. I will handle the atmospheric processor. "What happens if something goes wrong and we get separated?" Ji Hai asked. Nari looked at her closest friend. Ji Hai had taught her how to fly alien ships and how to fight in zero gravity. She was like the older sister that Nari had never had but always wanted. "Then we make sure our deaths accomplish something important," Nari said simply. They separated at sunset. Nari made her way through the hot, narrow maintenance tunnels that ran under the city like veins under skin. She was carrying a heavy backpack full of explosives and electronic hacking equipment. The tunnels were filled with large pipes that carried processed air to different parts of the planet. As she crawled through the tight spaces, Nari thought about her family back on Earth. Her father Kim Dae-ho would have been horrified by what she was planning to do. He had believed in growing things and creating life, not in destroying things and causing death. But her mother Park Sunmi would have understood completely. Sunmi had been gentle and kind, but she was also fierce and deadly when anyone threatened her children. The atmospheric processing facility was absolutely enormous. Nari emerged from the tunnels into a chamber that was the size of a small mountain. Massive machines hummed and glowed as they cleaned deadly poison from the air and replaced it with gases that Vorthak lungs could breathe safely. Without these machines working constantly, every single Vorthak on the planet would die within a few hours. Nari felt a moment of terrible doubt and uncertainty. She was about to commit genocide on a scale that made the destruction of Baeksan village look like nothing. 12 billion innocent people would die slowly and horribly if she succeeded with her mission. Then she remembered the list of numbers that Bo-Ra had shown her on the ship. 40,000 attacks in just 1 year, 20 billion dead people. The Vorthak Empire was like a cancer spreading through the galaxy, and cancers had to be cut out completely before they could spread any further. She began placing her explosive charges at carefully chosen points throughout the massive machine. The individual bombs were small, but they were positioned very precisely. When they exploded, they would cause a chain reaction that would destroy the entire atmospheric system. Warning alarms suddenly started ringing throughout the facility. Through her radio communicator, she could hear the sounds of explosions and gunfire from other parts of the city. Ji Hee and Tai Yang were doing their jobs perfectly, keeping the enemy guards busy and confused. "Nari," Bo-Ra's voice came through the radio. "I am inside their main communications center. I can send a signal to every conquered world in the galaxy when you give me the word." "What kind of signal?" Nari asked, as she placed the last explosive device and started setting the timer. "The exact locations of every single Vorthak military base, supply depot, and command center, plus complete proof that their homeworld is under attack right now. If other species see that the Vorthak can be hurt and defeated, they might finally fight back." Nari smiled grimly as she programmed the timer on her bombs. "Send the signal now." She could hear the sound of running footsteps echoing through the enormous chamber. Vorthak soldiers were coming to find her. She probably had less than 5 minutes before they discovered her location. Nari climbed up to the central control platform and plugged her portable computer into the main processing system. She had one more important thing to do before the explosives detonated. She wanted to send a personal message that the entire galaxy would hear and remember. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard as she hacked into the planetary communication network. In just a few moments, every screen on Keth Morin would display the same images. She uploaded a photograph of Bexon village as it had looked before the bombing. Green rice fields, small wooden houses, people working peacefully under the warm sun. Then she uploaded photographs of what the village looked like after the Vorthak attack. Black smoking craters, burned bodies, complete and total destruction. Finally, she typed a message in both human and Vorthak languages. This is Lee Nari of Earth. You destroyed my village and murdered my family for metals buried in the ground. You have done this same thing to 40,000 worlds. You call us weak and pathetic, but you are completely wrong. We are farmers who learned how to fight. We are teachers who learned how to kill. We are the soft species who will burn your empire to ashes. This massacre ends today. The enemy soldiers were getting much closer now. Nari could hear their voices bouncing off the walls of the massive chamber. She had maybe 2 minutes left before they found her. She activated the final countdown on her explosive timer and started running toward the exit tunnel. But more Vorthak soldiers appeared there, completely blocking her escape route. She was trapped with nowhere to go. Nari pulled out her weapon and began shooting. She had become very skilled at killing Vorthak over the past year of fighting, but there were simply too many of them attacking from all directions. A plasma energy bolt hit her in the shoulder and spun her around like a toy. Another one burned across her leg and sent her stumbling to the ground. She kept fighting and shooting, but she knew she was going to die here. Through her radio communicator, she heard Minho's desperate voice. "Nari, where are you? We have to leave this planet immediately." "I'm completely surrounded," she said, still firing at the soldiers closing in on her. "Get the others out safely. Make absolutely sure Bora's message reached the other worlds." "We are not leaving you behind," Jihai's voice said through the radio. "Yes, you are," Nari replied firmly. She looked at the timer on her bombs. 1 minute remaining. "The explosives are set and ready to detonate. When they explode, this entire facility will collapse. You need to be very far away when that happens." She could hear her friends arguing and pleading through the radio, but she turned off her communicator. She did not want to hear them die too. The Vorthak soldiers were closing in from all sides. Nari had run out of ammunition for her weapon. She sat down with her back against one of the huge processing machines and watched the timer count down towards 0. 30 seconds left. She thought about Junwoo and his innocent dreams of exploring the stars and meeting friendly alien races. She thought about her parents working together in their rice fields every morning. She thought about all the people, on all the worlds, who would live in freedom because of what she had accomplished today. 20 seconds left. Through the chamber's tall windows, she could see Vorthak civilians in the streets below. They were looking up at the giant screens showing her message. Some were running away in panic and fear. Others stood perfectly still, staring at the images of destruction their empire had caused across the galaxy. 10 seconds left. Nari closed her eyes and whispered the names of everyone from Bexon village that she could remember. Her family, her friends, her neighbors, the children she had played with as a little girl. In just a few seconds, their deaths would finally be paid for in full. 5 seconds left. She opened her eyes and looked at the Vorthak soldiers who had stopped shooting. They were staring at her with something that looked almost like respect for a brave enemy. 3 seconds left. "This is for every innocent person your empire has murdered," Nari said quietly. The explosives detonated. Space was much bigger and emptier than Nari had ever imagined. Their stolen Vorthak ship flew through the endless darkness between stars for weeks and weeks. She spent most of her time in the ship's workshop, studying alien technology and making detailed plans for their mission. The others took turns controlling the ship and watching for enemy patrol vessels that might discover them. "How much longer until we reach their homeworld?" Jihai asked from the pilot's chair. She was checking the navigation systems and looking at the star charts on her computer screen. "At least 2 more weeks, Minho answered. He was sitting at another computer, studying maps of Vorthak space. "Maybe 3 weeks if we have to travel around their military zones to avoid being detected." Nari was working in the back section of the ship with their prisoner. During their last attack on Earth, they had captured a Vorthak soldier named Lim Seok-jin. Nari had decided to bring him along to translate alien documents and answer questions about his homeworld and military forces. The alien looked like a giant insect with gray skin and 4 long arms. His black eyes showed no feelings or emotions. He had been trained from birth to die before giving information to his enemies, but Nari was very patient. Over the past months, she had learned many effective ways to break down an enemy's will to resist. "Tell me about the atmospheric processing system on Kethmaran," Nari said. She was showing him technical drawings and blueprints on a tablet computer. Seok Jin stared at her but said nothing. He had not spoken a single word for the past 3 days. "I know you can understand every word I'm saying," Nari continued calmly. "I know you speak human languages perfectly. Your people always study their victims before attacking their worlds." The alien remained completely silent. Nari put down the tablet and looked directly into his black eyes. "My village was completely destroyed 6 months ago. 847 innocent people died, including my parents and my little brother." "Do you know why your people murdered them?" The alien's head moved slightly. Nari could see interest and curiosity in his strange eyes. "Because there were valuable rare metals buried deep under our mountain," she said. "Your people needed those metals to build more ships and weapons. So you killed everyone who lived there and stole what you wanted from the ground. It was a minor resource extraction operation," Seok Jin said suddenly. His voice sounded like pieces of metal scraping against each other. "Your people were simply in the way of progress." Nari felt hot anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice calm and controlled. "In the way of what kind of progress?" "Expansion. Growth. The Vorthek Empire becomes stronger by taking whatever we need from weaker species. Your people are soft and pathetic. You cannot stop us from taking what belongs to us. And yet here I am," Nari said quietly. "A soft, pathetic human flying toward your homeworld in one of your own military ships." Seok Jin made a harsh sound that might have been laughter. "One ship, 5 humans, against billions of Vorthak warriors and thousands of battle fleets. You will die quickly and be completely forgotten." "Maybe we will die," Nari said. "But first we will show your people what happens when soft, pathetic humans get really angry." She left the alien alone in his prison cell and walked to the front of the ship. Through the large windows she could see distant stars and the endless emptiness of space. Somewhere ahead in that darkness was Kethmaran, the homeworld of the race that had destroyed everything she loved. "Nari," Bora called from her computer workstation. "I found something important in the alien databases that you need to see immediately." Nari walked over to where the scientist was working. Bora's computer screen showed a very long list of numbers and text written in alien languages. "What exactly is this?" Nari asked. "Attack records," Bora said in a quiet, shaking voice. "From just the past year alone. Look at this number here." Nari looked at the screen. Even though most of the text was in alien writing, she could easily understand the numbers. 40,000. 40,000 separate attacks in only 1 year. 40,000 different worlds? Nari asked. Villages, cities, research stations, colony ships, mining operations, any place where they found something valuable they wanted to steal. Bora's voice was filled with anger and horror. "Nari, they are not just attacking humans. They are attacking hundreds of different species across the entire galaxy." Nari stared at the computer screen. Her village had been just one tiny mark on this huge list of death and destruction. The Vorthak Empire was like a deadly disease spreading across the galaxy, killing everything in its path for profit. "How many people total?" she asked. Bora worked with her computer for several long minutes, adding numbers and making calculations. Based on average population sizes for different types of settlements, probably about 20 billion dead in just the past year, and that number only includes the small attacks like what happened to Baksan. 20 billion people. The number was so large that Nari could not really understand it. She tried to imagine 20 billion faces, 20 billion families, 20 billion voices crying out for justice. It was impossible. "We are not just going for revenge anymore," Nari said slowly. "We are going to save the galaxy. 5 people against an entire empire that controls hundreds of worlds?" Taeyang asked. He had been listening to their conversation from his seat near the weapons control systems. "Sometimes it only takes one person to start a fire," Nari said, "and once a fire starts it can spread everywhere." 2 weeks later they finally reached the Kethmaran star system. Nari stood at the main window of their ship and looked at the alien homeworld for the first time. It was strangely beautiful in a cold, unfriendly way. The planet was covered with enormous crystal cities that sparkled and glowed in the light of their sun. Hundreds of massive ships moved in and out of the atmosphere like giant metal birds. Sensors show about 12 billion Vorthak living on the surface, Jihai reported from the pilot station, plus military bases, industrial factories, and the central atmospheric processing facility. Minho was studying readings from his scientific instruments. The atmospheric processor is definitely the key to everything, he said. It controls the air composition for the entire planet. Their original atmosphere was deadly poisonous, even to them. They absolutely need the processor to stay alive. Can we destroy it with the weapons we have? Nari asked. Not with direct attacks, Minho said. But if we could somehow get inside the facility and sabotage the main control systems, we could cause a cascade failure. It would take them days or weeks to repair the damage. Days might be enough time, Nari said. She was thinking about all the different species the Vorthak had been attacking. If Kethmoran was thrown into chaos and confusion, maybe other worlds would have a chance to fight back successfully. There is something else you should know, Bo-Ra said. She was monitoring Vorthak communication signals from across the galaxy. They are receiving reports about uprisings and rebellions on several of their conquered worlds. Some species are already starting to fight back against them. Nari smiled. It was the first real, genuine smile she had felt since Bexon Village was destroyed. Then we are not completely alone in this fight after all. She turned around to face her team. These 4 people had become her entire world. They were her friends, her family, and her army all at the same time. Together they had traveled further from Earth than any human beings before them. This is our last chance to change our minds, she said. Once we go down to that planet, we probably will not be coming back home. Are you ready for this? We have been ready since the day they murdered our families, Jihai said firmly. The others nodded in agreement. They had all lost everything that mattered to them. Now they had a chance to make sure no one else would suffer the same terrible losses. Nari looked out at Kethmoran one final time. Somewhere on that beautiful, deadly world was the beating heart of an empire built on murder and theft. She was going to cut out that heart with her bare hands if necessary. Take us down to the planet, she said. Their ship turned toward Kethmoran and began its final descent. Behind them, the stars watched in silence as 5 humans prepared to challenge the fate of every living creature in the galaxy. 6 months had passed since the day Bexon Village died. Nari looked like a completely different person now. Her soft hands that once planted rice were now hard and covered with small scars from working with metal and sharp tools. Her face was thinner and her eyes had become cold and distant. She wore black military clothes and carried weapons like a trained soldier. Minho had been teaching her everything he knew. His secret workshop was hidden deep inside the mountain caves where the aliens could never find it. The old man had been collecting broken alien technology for many years. Inside his workshop were computers, advanced tools, and pieces of Vorthak equipment that he had gathered from old battle sites. Show me how their communication devices work again, Nari said. She was sitting at a metal table covered with broken alien equipment. Her fingers moved quickly and carefully as she took apart a small electronic device. Be very careful with that blue wire, Minho warned her. If you connect it to the wrong place, the whole thing will explode and take your hand with it. Nari had learned to understand alien technology better than most trained engineers. She was patient and careful with the delicate work, just like when she used to plant rice seeds in perfect rows. But now she used those same skills to build weapons instead of growing food to feed people. They were not alone in their mountain hideout anymore. Other people had found them over the past months. All of them were survivors from different Vorthak attacks across the planet. Park Ji-hai had been a military pilot before aliens bombed the city of Busan and killed her entire family. Song Tai-yang knew how to use explosives and heavy weapons because he had been a demolition expert, until his whole army unit was destroyed. Yoon Bo-Ra was a scientist who studied alien life forms until the Vorthak attacked her research station and murdered everyone there. All of these people had lost everything they cared about. All of them wanted revenge against the aliens who had destroyed their lives. We intercepted the enemy supply convoy schedules, Ji-hai said as she walked into the workshop. She was holding a small computer device that she had stolen from a Vorthak communication base. 3 alien transport ships will fly through the mountain valley tomorrow night. How many enemy guards will be with them? Nari asked without looking up from her work. Maybe 20 soldiers, possibly 30. They are not expecting any trouble in this area because they think all the humans here are dead. Nari smiled, but it was not a warm or happy smile. It was the cold smile of someone planning violence. Good. We will show them what kind of trouble dead humans can cause. They called their group the Silent Mountain Cell. For the past 6 months, they had been attacking Vorthak supply lines and military outposts. They would strike hard and fast, then disappear back into the mountains before the aliens could organize a counterattack. Nari planned every mission carefully and precisely. She knew the enemy was much stronger than her small group, so she had to be much smarter than them. The Vorthak believed that humans were weak and stupid creatures who could not fight back effectively. This was their biggest mistake. Nari used their arrogance and overconfidence against them. She set traps in places they thought were safe and attacked from directions they never expected. "Remember the plan," Nari told her team as they prepared their weapons for the convoy attack. "We capture one ship without destroying it completely. I need the navigation computer intact." "Why do we need their navigation system?" Tae Yang asked. "We already have enough stolen weapons and supplies." Nari did not answer immediately. She was looking at a large star map hanging on the cave wall. Red marks showed every place where the Vorthak had attacked human settlements. There were hundreds of red marks covering the map. "Because I want to know exactly where these monsters come from," she finally said. The convoy attack went exactly as Nari had planned. Her team hid themselves among the rocks high above the narrow mountain road. When the 3 alien ships flew through the valley in formation, they hit them with rocket launchers and electromagnetic pulse weapons. 2 ships crashed into the mountainside and exploded in balls of fire. The 3rd ship was damaged but still mostly intact. Nari and her team killed the surviving Vorthak soldiers quickly and efficiently. She felt nothing when the aliens died. No guilt, no satisfaction, nothing at all. These creatures had murdered her family and destroyed her home. Now they were dead. It was that simple. Inside the captured ship, Nari found exactly what she had been looking for. The navigation computer contained detailed maps of all Vorthak territory. She could see their trade routes, their military bases, their conquered worlds, and most important of all, the location of their home planet. "Keth Morin," she said, reading the alien text on the glowing screen. "That is the name of their home world." Minho looked over her shoulder at the star chart. "Nari, that planet is more than 50 light-years away from Earth. Even using their fastest ships, it would take many months to travel there. Then we will need many months to prepare," Nari said calmly. "This is completely insane," Bora said. "We are talking about attacking their home world. There are billions of Vorthak living on that planet. And they have killed billions of our people," Nari replied without emotion. "All across this galaxy, they destroy entire worlds and murder everyone who lives there. Someone has to make them stop." She turned around to face her team. These 4 people had become her new family after her real family was murdered. They were all that remained of their old lives. "I am not asking any of you to come with me on this mission," Nari said. "This is my choice to make. My parents and my brother died in Beksan village. I made a promise to make the Vorthak pay for what they did to them. Your family." Jihai laughed, but there was no happiness in the sound. "Nari, we are your family now. And those alien monsters killed our families too. Of course we are going with you to their home world." The others nodded in agreement. Tai Yang began checking his weapons and equipment. Bora started copying important data from the alien computer systems. Minho began making detailed plans for the long and dangerous journey ahead. That night, Nari sat alone outside the cave entrance. She was looking up at the thousands of stars in the clear night sky and thinking about Junwoo. Her little brother had always dreamed of traveling to space and meeting alien races from other worlds. He had imagined it would be an adventure full of wonder and discovery. Now Nari would travel to the stars too. But she was not going for adventure or discovery. She was going to bring war and death to those who had brought war and death to Earth. "I will keep the promise I made to you," she whispered to the stars above. "They took everything away from us. Now I will take everything away from them." She did not know that her words would eventually change the fate of every living creature in the galaxy. She was just a farmer's daughter who had learned to fight and kill. But sometimes that is exactly what the universe needs to tip the balance between slavery and freedom. The Silent Mountain Cell spent the next month making preparations for their impossible mission. They studied Vorthak technology until they understood it better than some Vorthak engineers. They practiced flying captured alien ships and learned to use advanced weapon systems. They gathered supplies and equipment for a journey that would probably be a one-way trip. Nari trained harder than anyone else. She pushed her body and mind to their limits and beyond. She memorized every piece of information about Vorthak society, military organization, and planetary defenses. She learned to think like her enemies so she could find ways to destroy them more effectively. Finally, they were as ready as they could be. 5 humans in a stolen Vorthak warship, preparing to travel across the galaxy to attack the heart of an alien empire. It should have been completely impossible, but Nari had learned that impossible was just another word for something that nobody had done yet. The morning they left Earth, Nari took one last look at the mountains where her village had been. Somewhere under all that burned ground were the bodies of everyone she'd ever loved. She would probably never see this place again. But when she died, she would die knowing that her family had been avenged. Nari walked through the rice fields in the early morning light. The sun was just rising over the mountains that surrounded Beksan village. She loved this quiet time when the world was still peaceful and calm. Her boots made soft sounds as she stepped carefully between the green rice plants. The village was small and simple. Only 847 people lived there. Most families had been farming the same land for hundreds of years. Nari's family grew rice and vegetables on their small plot of land. It was hard work, but it was honest work. Her father, Kim Dae-ho, always told her that feeding people was the most important job anyone could do. Nari was 23 years old. She had never wanted to leave her village or see other places. This was her home, and she was happy here. Her younger brother, Lee Junwoo, was different. He spent hours reading about spaceships and other planets on his old computer. He dreamed of joining the Space Defense Corps and traveling to distant worlds. Their mother, Park Sun-mi, would laugh and tell him to help with the farming instead of dreaming about the stars. Today, Nari needed to collect healing herbs from the forest caves high up in the mountains. The village doctor needed them to make medicine for the coming winter months. She filled her backpack with water bottles and food, then started walking up the narrow mountain path. The caves were deep and cool inside the mountain. Nari had been coming here since she was a small child. She knew every tunnel and every hidden passage. The special herbs grew best in the dark, wet places where sunlight never reached. She worked slowly and carefully, picking only the healthiest plants and leaving the rest to grow. She was deep inside the caves when she first heard the strange sound. At first she thought it might be thunder from a coming storm, but it was different. It was much louder and it did not stop. The sound made the cave walls shake and vibrate. Small rocks began falling from the ceiling above her head. Nari dropped her basket of herbs and ran toward the cave entrance. The sound was getting louder and louder with every step. When she reached the opening and looked up at the sky, she could not believe what she saw. Huge red ships filled the sky above her village. They were massive, bigger than any building she had ever seen in her life. The ships had no wings like the aircraft she had seen in pictures. They just floated in the air like giant pieces of metal. Strange blue lights flashed along their sides in patterns she did not understand. Then the attack began. Bright beams of white light shot down from the ships like lightning. Wherever the light touched the ground, everything exploded in balls of fire. Houses disappeared in flashes of burning light. The rice fields caught fire and burned like paper. People ran in all directions, screaming and crying, but there was nowhere safe to go. Nari tried to run down the mountain toward her home, but the heat from the explosions was too strong. It pushed her back into the cave like a giant hand. She screamed for her family, calling their names as loud as she could, but her voice was lost in the terrible noise of the bombing. The attack continued for what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes. Nari pressed herself against the cave wall and watched helplessly as her entire world was destroyed. The alien ships fired their weapons until nothing moved in the valley below. Then as suddenly as they had come, they flew away into the sky and disappeared. When the ships were gone, Nari ran down the mountain as fast as she could. The path was covered with burning pieces of wood and twisted metal. The air was thick with black smoke that burned her eyes and made her cough. She could barely see where she was going. Beksan village was completely gone. Where houses had stood that morning, there were only black holes burned into the ground. The rice fields were sheets of orange flame. Dead bodies lay everywhere, some burned beyond recognition. Nari ran from place to place, desperately looking for anyone who might still be alive. She found the place where her family's house had been, or what was left of it. The building was completely destroyed. Nothing remained but broken pieces of wood and metal scattered across the ground. She dug through the wreckage with her bare hands, calling their names over and over. Her father, her mother, her little brother. None of them answered her calls. In the ruins, Nari found Junwoo's journal. The pages were burned and blackened, but she could still read some of the words. On the last page, he had written about his dream to join the Space Defense Forces and protect Earth from alien attacks. Now he was dead, and the aliens had won without anyone fighting back. Nari sat down in the ashes of her home and cried until she had no more tears left. The sun was setting behind the mountains, and she was completely alone. 847 people had been alive in Bexon that morning. Now she was the only one left in the world, but she was wrong about being alone. As darkness fell over the destroyed village, she heard someone calling her name. An old man came walking slowly through the ruins, stepping carefully around the debris. It was Choi Min-ho, who had lived by himself at the edge of the village. He was 70 years old, and most people thought he was just a strange old man who fixed broken machines in his workshop. Min-ho was carrying a bag of tools and supplies. He was hurt but still able to walk. Blood ran down the side of his face from a deep cut on his forehead, and his clothes were torn and dirty. "Nari," he said when he saw her sitting in the ruins. "Thank all the gods you are still alive. I was afraid everyone was dead." "They are all dead," Nari said in a voice that sounded empty and hollow. "My family, my friends, everyone I have ever known. Why did this happen to us? What did we do wrong?" Min-ho sat down next to her in the ashes. For a long time he said nothing. Then he spoke quietly. "I used to work for the Korean Space Force many years ago. I know about these aliens. They are called the Vorthak. They attack small, defenseless places like our village to steal valuable things from the ground. They do not care about the people who live there. Steal things? They killed everyone just to steal things from the ground? Yes, there are rare metals deep under our mountain. The Vorthak need these metals to build their ships and weapons. To them, we are just insects getting in their way." Nari felt something cold and hard growing inside her chest. It was not sadness anymore. It was pure, burning anger that seemed to fill her entire body. "Where do they come from?" she asked. Min-ho looked at her carefully with his old, wise eyes. "Why do you want to know that?" Nari stood up and looked at the burning remains of her village. She thought about her father's kind smile and her mother's gentle hands. She thought about Junwoo and all his dreams of protecting Earth from exactly this kind of attack. "Because I am going to make them pay for what they have done." The old man was quiet for a very long time. Then he slowly got to his feet. "Come with me, child. I have some things hidden that might be able to help us. But Nari, if we choose this path, there will be no going back to the life you knew. The Vorthak Empire has billions of soldiers and thousands of warships. We are just two people with nothing but anger." Nari took one last look at the place where her home had been. She could still smell the smoke and death in the air. "Then we will make sure these two people are enough." They walked away from the ruins together, the old man and the young woman. Behind them, what was left of Bexon village continued to burn through the long night. But something new was being born in the ashes and flames, something the Vorthak Empire would eventually learn to fear.